Well, hello. Welcome back to Curlis Mania, where we talk all things pop, rock, and prog. We've been pretty heavy on the prog lately, so I'm happy to be coming back to some rock and roll, some straight ahead rock. Let's do this. I am very Before I do anything else, I have to introduce, it's not even introducing, it's just welcoming back to the channel, Mr. Davey Cretin from Cretin Classics. Davey, welcome, and how are you today?
I'm fine. Thanks for having me again. I
Uh,
brought my mechanical pencils. I heard you missed us. We're back. Give me something to write on, man. Van Halen album battle. Oh, wait, that's the wrong album. And I also did the spoken word Roth part in the wrong order.
We're talking about
Hey,
this one right here, man. No, we're not
nice.
talking. We're not talking about this today. Maybe
Maybe
some
in the
other days.
future.
Maybe some other day. Exactly. Um, we are here to talk about two records from Van Halen, as Davey so eloquently stated. We are here to talk about Roth-era Van Halen, Women and Children First versus Fair Warning. So this is 79 and 80, is that right? I should know this.
No, 80-81.
Yeah, 80, 81, correct. That's correct. Yes. 79 is Van Halen too. So yes, 80, 81. And with these guys cranking out records every single year. That was back in the day. That was awesome. So this is the battle that, we're talking about doing another battle, and I said, which ones are we gonna do? And I threw out a lot of different battles, and then Davey said, let's do Van Halen. So I'm really happy to be doing Van Halen today. Um, this is going to be a tough battle, though, as most of them are, but this one's going to be another hard one. Um, so before we jump into the battle itself, I always like to do a little bit of a history, sort of kind of a background leading up to the first record we're going to talk about. So, so for those who, I know there's a lot of diehard Van Halen people out there, but for those who don't know, basically the band is built around two brothers, Eddie and Alex Van Halen. They were raised in Amsterdam, Netherlands, and they were brought up in a very musical family. Their dad was a big band guy, and they all took classical. I think Eddie took piano lessons, classical piano lessons, and he was one of those guys that would win competitions, just based on playing by ear. He didn't. He was just like he was barely even reading music. He was just doing it so well that he would win competitions. So that's just we're talking about the basic, musical genius that started already before he was even playing guitar. Um, so this family moved to Pasadena, California in 1962. Fast forward, they create a power trio: Alex on drums, Eddie on guitar and vocals, and then there's a bass player who I can't remember his name, but they were called Mammoth, and they were kind of in the mold of Cream with Eddie singing lead. Um, I'm fast forwarding through things. They met David Lee Roth. He was in another band called Red Ball Jets. He was the lead singer. They would play a lot of parties together, like backyard parties, and they ended up they needed a PA. They knew that David had a great PA, so he lent them the PA and kind of charged them for it, of course. And so they thought, wait a minute, maybe we can save some money and just get him in the band and have him sing lead, because Eddie was getting tired of singing anyway. So they brought in David Lee Roth, and then they see Michael Anthony playing in another band called Snake. He was fronting the band, playing bass and singing. And they said, wait a minute, he's really strong. Man, he's a good bass player and he can sing. So they got him in the band, and that's the four that formed the classic lineup. They ended up playing a lot of backyard parties. That's kind of how they got going. They sort of, in California, there were these things where they had these huge backyard parties. They were almost like mini concerts, and people would set up lights and a stage in their backyard, and they would just flyer the heck out of like the whole parking lot at whatever, at Walmart or whatever it was, and it would put stuff in high schools. They would put up big posters saying, hey, big party this weekend, stay starring Van Halen. And they became really popular, sort of a really popular local band. And if you haven't read the book Van Halen Rising, there's a book, it's called, and I can't remember who wrote it, but it's called Van Halen Rising. It's excellent. It kind of tells you all about this period of how they got popular before they even became famous. In Pasadena, they were a very popular band. So anyway, they end up moving to Sunset Strip, playing at places like Gazzari's and Whiskey a Go Go and the Starwood, and they're playing mix of covers and originals, and they begin getting traction in that circuit, and next thing you know, in mid 1970, well, before I go to that, in November '76, Gene Simmons records demos with them and actually tries to get Bill Aucoin, who was managing Kiss, interested in this new band called Van Halen. And Bill Aucoin, I guess, listened to it and took a pass, like, no thanks, I'm not interested. So, man, that's like turning down the Beatles or something,
Yep.
uh, you know. And that's kind of a little side note. But in mid 1977, Ted Templeman and Mo Austin from Warner Brothers got a tip from somebody saying you got to check this band out. They went to the Starwood, and it was like Wednesday night or something. There's barely anybody there, but these two guys were there, and they were just blown away immediately by this band. They just, oh my god, these guys are so good. That guitarist is absolutely blowing my mind. So they literally, I think they ran them down, like they signed them that like the next day or something. It was like so fast. Like he was like, I don't want anyone else to discover this band. I got to quickly sign these guys. They end up signing to Warner Brothers for a 2 album deal. And they take them into Sunset Sound and they record the debut basically live on the floor. I mean, there's just like it's a live album basically that recorded in the studio. That ends up being the debut. It ends up being number 19 on Billboard, and it was released on February 10th, 1978. Regarded as one of the best debuts of all time by a lot of people. Sold more than 10 million albums in the U.S. alone. So I mean, it was a huge, massive debut, and people when they heard Eruption. I mean, I don't know when the first time you heard Van Halen, Davey, but uh, what was your introduction to Van Halen?
I must have, because I was listening to FM rock radio in the late 70s. I probably heard songs like Beautiful Girls, maybe Running with the Devil, whatever they were playing on the Manhattan rock stations. But those songs never hit me. And I'll talk about what hit me when we start.
Perfect, perfect. So yeah, so that debut just explodes. Very heavy rock, and I mean Eruption. Just people can't believe it when they hear Eruption. The guitar players are like, "What is happening? What is
Yes.
he doing?" It's like blowing everyone's minds. And a lot of people thought he was overdubbing. That was just one guitar, so they were like, "Oh my god, how is he doing that?" So anyway, a quick follow-up debut, Van Halen 2 comes out in March 23rd, 1979. Same exact thing, Sunset Sound with Ted Templeman and Don Landy, and they just another live album, basically, recorded kind of very, very similar to the first album. And it's also very successful. And it's great. There's a video on YouTube where they're opening. I think they're the opening band for somebody, maybe even Sabbath. I can't remember, but it's like there's a video and it's very grainy, but it's like somebody in the crowd. But it's awesome, and you hear David Lee Roth say, "Our next album's coming out next week." It's called Van Halen 2, and this song is from it. And he plays like something from Van Halen 2. It's really cool. Um, so anyway, it's a very upbeat rocking party album essentially. um Very solid record. In my opinion, it's almost as good as the debut. I think it's excellent. I think Van Halen 2 is really good. So they have two solid albums, two solid sellers, and two tours under their belt, and they go to record LP number 3 in December of 1979. So that is, I'm going to hand it over to Davey for Women and Children First.
Okay. Also recorded at Sunset Sound in Hollywood, California. Women and Children First came out March of 1980. Produced again by Ted Templeman, engineered by Don Landy. There are no cover songs on this record. This is the first Van Halen album, their third studio record, with no cover songs. So it's 9 original tracks. One is an instrumental that has some vocalizations in it. It's less than a minute long. Tora Tora. I don't really even consider it a song. It's more of an intro to Loss
Yeah.
of Control, is the
Yep.
way I always looked at it. The first single from this record hit number 55 on the Hot 100 Billboard charts. And this is the first song that struck me from Van Halen, and The Cradle Will Rock. 3.5 minutes. And I remember hearing that I thought it was guitar. I thought it was a guitar riff. It sounded like some crazy guitar sound. and it was very catchy, and I loved the song and the Cradle Will Rock. That's the first song I really remember hearing by Van Halen that hit me. Even though I probably heard some of the other singles earlier, I said, oh, it's okay. But this is a song that really hit my head, hit my ears. And I said, wow, I love that. That sounds great. What a cool sounding guitar. Little did I know that it was actually, and I'm going to read this so I get it right, because I used to be a singer. I'm not a musician like you. You started as a drummer and then went to guitar, right?
That's correct. Yep. Yep.
So you probably know all these things by heart. So he was actually playing a flanger affected Wurlitzer electric piano played through his 1960s model 100-watt Marshall Plexi amplifier. And it got that strange sound where it sounds like a crazy guitar, but it's actually an electric piano just souped up to sound like a crazy guitar. And I'm a big prog guy, big keyboard guy. So I guess that really caught my ear, that sound. And it turned out to be a piano. And for years, I thought it was just a crazy guitar sound. But this is the opening track on the record, the first single. And it starts off the album in fine form. And then it goes to Everybody Wants Some. And that song was featured. Of course, it has the great ending line by David Lee Roth, look, I'll pay you for what the blank, and it sort of fades out as he's saying it on the record. And this was a concert staple. Everybody Wants Some in the Roth era. And I do remember seeing the movie Better Off Dead, 1985 in the movie.
I was going to say that. Yep.
Yep. And the sound where John Cusack's character is working in a fast food place, supposed to be like a McDonald's or a Burger King type place. And all of a sudden he's dreaming. There's this animation sequence where the hamburger is David Lee Roth, and it's a whole intro of the Van Halen song Everybody Wants Some used in the movie. And since then it's been used in a lot of other films I didn't even know about. And it's a claymation scene, by the way. It was also used in 2001's Joe Dirt, 2009's Zombieland, 2016's Everybody Wants Some by filmmaker Richard Linklater, and even in a 1999 TV episode of Freaks and Geeks, which I know I saw at the time. I just don't remember that song being in the show. That show I watched. The other movies, except Better Off Dead, I don't think I've ever seen. And this song is just powerful rocker. It's a long song. It's 5 minutes. It's over 5 minutes, just barely over the 5-minute mark. And I think I should mention something about this album. Your good friend, Martin Popoff, an acquaintance of mine I met once on a video I filmed recently. This album has the ellipses at the end of In the Cradle Will Rock. It has the 3 dots. Everybody Wants Some has 2 exclamation marks. Torah Torah has Torah exclamation mark, Torah exclamation mark. Could This Be Magic has a question mark. This is just odd stuff that I know that always makes me think, and I know this kind of stuff drives Martin Popoff crazy.
It does.
But
it does.
Just have this bizarre punctuation, just like with Black Sabbath Vol 4. He said everyone calls the record Volume 4, but the cover VOL, and there's no period. So I know that stuff drives him crazy. And I noticed here as I'm making my notes and I'm looking at the record, this is a little strange. Moving on to track 3. The song Fools. And this at the time was like an epic Van Halen song. It's just a hair under 6 minutes. And I think at the time, it's from the first 6 albums, it's the longest studio song with David Lee Roth at the helm. And it has a very long intro. And then at 1:20, that heavy riff comes in. Bow, 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 bow.
Yeah.
And then just the way that Alex, I think he's an underrated drummer, just listening to these 2 records constantly for the last week or 2, and just the way his drums come in. Yeah. Because they're a 3-piece with vocals, you get to hear all the instrumentation. And I know that probably some of the bass work on these 2 records is probably by Eddie Van Halen. I had a coworker in one of the record stores I worked at, Josh, and he used to say, I was listening to this song, or I could tell that's Eddie playing bass. It's not Michael Anthony. And he used to tell me, yeah, that's Eddie on bass. So I'm not sure who's playing bass on every Van Halen song, because on Van Halen 3, when Sharon was on the record, Eddie did the bulk of the bass work on that album.
Right. Yep.
And when Sammy released his last solo album, the self-titled one, in what, 86, I think it was 87, that turned out to be called I Never Said Goodbye. Eddie plays bass on that whole record.
Oh, he
So he
does. Okay.
plays
All right.
bass as well as he plays guitar.
Got
So
it.
he might be doing the bass here, but between the rhythm section of Michael Anthony, he has some nice little lead bass fills, and just Alex's lead drums at times. They just come through the mix and just punch you right in the face.
Yeah.
And I think with
Yeah.
Eddie's great guitar work, I mean, every solo basically on every Van Halen album, especially in the Roth era, just amazing solos, his rhythms. And these two records were sort of when they started multi-tracking, where you might sometimes hear a rhythm guitar under Eddie's guitar solos. But like you said, for the first two records, they were just done live. And I know absolutely on the first record, when Eddie is soloing, you just hear the bass and drums under it. There are no rhythm guitars.
Yes, there's no rhythm. Exactly. Exactly.
But as they went along and learned the studio, and they started adding tricks to their techniques, and they started putting some rhythm guitar tracks underneath when Eddie was soloing.
Right.
So this song, Fools, I just think is a really good long song. And I used to love singing along at work sometimes to the song when I was in a bad mood. I used to sing Fools, I Work with Fools when I get alienated at my coworkers occasionally, but no one ever knew that I was singing that. And I just did that at my job recently when I was doing an overnight shift. I was singing along, playing the album at work, and I started singing Fools, I Work with Fools. So just one of those wacky things that one does. And I love usually like spoken word stuff in music, especially prog songs. I think it's a little pretentious in prog rock when there's a spoken word section. But when Roth does it in Van Halen, it's the best. He'll say something at the beginning, the middle, the end of a song, and it just seems to go with the music. And it's probably just spontaneously done in the studio. I know he used to plan and say the same stage patter all the time, but on the records, I think a lot of it is spontaneous.
You can kind of tell. Kind of it. Yeah. Seems like it.
And then at the end of side one on the original vinyl, the just slightly over 4-minute Romeo Delight. And at the record stores, we used to play these records, especially the first 6 Van Halen albums. We used to rotate them, play them sort of at the end of the day just to get us pumped for that last half hour or so. Most of these records are so short. This record is only
33 minutes.
and a half minutes.
Yeah.
So short. So we would close at 8 o'clock most days. We'd put it on at 7:15. The record would end, and we wouldn't have any music on, and that was a signal, okay, to everyone that they have to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember during Christmas time, just for a quick aside, I used to, because you get the big crowds at Christmas time for the holidays. They want to buy records and CDs, gift certificates for their loved ones. And people wouldn't want to leave when we were closing. So I used to put on Metal Machine Music by Lou Reed. And I remember one of my coworkers like, Dave, I have to turn this off. I can't take it anymore. Baby, please, I can't take it anymore. I didn't even plan that.
Yeah.
But which is the catch line in Romeo Delight.
Yeah.
So this is a really good song, and it was a show opener for years during the Roth era. They used to open their shows with Romeo Delight. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the Van Halen songs, they have great breakdown sections where it stops the hard rock, because I always considered Van Halen a hard rock band. Yeah. Not metal, not rock, they're hard rock, because they have this intensity that they play with. So they're a hard rock band, but the breakdowns in some of these songs, Everybody Wants Some, I neglected to say that has a great breakdown, where it's like the tribal drumming. And definitely this song, Romeo Delight, another great breakdown section.
Yeah.
So then we go to side 2 of the vinyl, and it starts off with Tora Tora, which is just an instrumental intro to Loss of Control. And I know a lot of fans aren't, some people aren't thrilled with this song, but I love that opening riff that Eddie plays on this song. And it's got this heavy, frenetic, chaotic verse. And Michael Anthony, you just hear him when they're saying lost control, lost control, lost control, and he's just high up there in the stratosphere with the backing vocals. Amazing. And I'm curious to see when Sammy Hagar and Michael Anthony do that tour this summer, which I think is starting in a couple of months. I'm curious to see how Michael Anthony sounds singing all the old Van Halen songs,
Yeah.
because they're doing this tour that's a tribute to Eddie, which is he passed away a while ago, and they're just getting to it now. That's how things move in the Van Halen camp, and it's
Right.
not even an official tribute. It's just Sammy and it's Michael, and they're doing their own tribute
Right.
because Alex has retired from music, just sold all his awards, his drum kits recently. That was a big thing in the news.
Yeah. I just saw that. That's so sad, you know.
He's retiring, but
Done.
he
He's done.
lost his brother, so he's just
Yeah.
crushed and he's done with music.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
sad because he's such a great drummer, and just
Yeah.
the fills he pulls off and his tom work and his cymbal work on certain
Yeah.
songs. I was just listening to the drums a lot, saying, wow, he is such an amazing drummer.
Absolutely.
So after Loss of Control, we go to Take Your Whiskey Home, which has a bluesy country type opening, and then it kicks in and it becomes this hard rock song. It's mid-paced, probably my least favorite song on the record, but it's still a good song. After Take Your Whiskey Home, I want to get this straight because my notes are a little out of order. We get Could This Be Magic? And this is an acoustic song, and David Lee Roth plays acoustic guitar on here. He's playing the rhythm acoustic guitar, and Eddie's doing the country picking style, the chicken picking lead work on here. And this is the only song in the Van Halen catalog to feature a female guest backing vocalist, and it's Nicolette Larson singing backing vocals. She's the high harmony vocal in the chorus here.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting fact that I don't know if I knew about. And it's a good acoustic song. I like this one. And then we go into the last track on the record, which is the deep track, one I always love from this record, In a Simple Rhyme. And I love that acoustic picking intro that Eddie does. It's only like 15 seconds. And then Alex Van Halen has this very brief drum solo, and it sort of has this jazzy vibe to it. I was listening, saying that sort of sounds a bit more like jazz than hard rock or metal. And then let's see, catchy chorus. That's the thing about Van Halen. They were hard rock. They always had catchy choruses, just hooks galore that you could sing along with, even if you didn't know what the heck Roth was singing on the verses. Just on the chorus, you could sing along, even if it didn't have the title of the song.
Yeah.
And I love the way this song ends, that vocal ending. It's so melodic. And then it stops for a second, and there's this 20-second instrumental. On the CD, they gave it a hard stop. On the original vinyl, it faded out. And it's a song called Growth. And they used to play it live in concert, just this instrumental. Like that for 20 seconds. The hard stop with Alex on the cymbal ends that thing. They used to play it in concert during their encores. When I get Roth would probably introduce the band, and he would just do his usual stage raps, and they would play that. And they meant to start album number 4 with this song called Growth, this instrumental. But then by the time they recorded the next album, they threw that idea out the window. So this is a really good record, no covers. It's short, it's sweet, and it just comes in swinging and hits you with a hammer. So it's an excellent album. And I always love this album. And the odd thing is that in America, this went 3 times platinum. This and the record we're going to talk about next were the least selling of the first 6 Van Halen albums. And to me, they're probably the best 2 out of the first 6. So it charted at number 6 in America, went 3 times platinum. In Canada, with our friends Tim Derling and Martin Popoff, it reached number 12 and went 2 times platinum. Oh, also Mike Ladano from Canada. In Sweden, our good buddy from the Prague Corner, Pontus.
Yeah.
And it charted at number 19 in Sweden. And the UK, number 15. And there was a Helmut Newton poster of David Lee Roth actually chained to a fence. So I guess you would call that light bondage back in the day. And the picture was taken by Helmut Newton. And I remember in my second record store job, like we had a lot of pictures of women and girls just plastered in the back of the store where the customers couldn't see. And in the room when we were a video record store, my second job, we had the poster hanging up from Women and Children First. I guess the girls had put it up, of Roth chained to the fence. So I
Mhm,
remember seeing that poster all the time when I used to go into the back to get the video to rent to a customer.
mhm.
And that's basically, yeah, that's all my notes on this album. So that is Women and Children First from March of 1980, the third Van Halen album.
Very nice. Great
Sorry
analysis.
if I rambled, by the way.
No, you did not. You it's perfect. It's great. I loved it.
Thanks.
I gotta concur on a lot of what you said. I mean, it's there's a little bit of a darker edge on this. There's sort of creeping in a little bit. Like, the first two records are like, let's party. And then the third record, it seems like by this point, Eddie, I think, is wanting to do something a little bit different. And even like a song like you mentioned, The Cradle Will Rock, first song on the record, and it kind of has that a little bit darker, a little edgier. Like, just I just love when he says, have you seen Junior's grades? It's like that, like, sums up the whole song in like one little bit. And then it goes right into that solo, and it's just like, oh yeah, like it's just, and like you said, for the longest time, I had no idea that was a Wurlitzer. I thought it was a guitar as well, but
Yep.
he's got it cranked through a Marshall, and with that, with that effect on it. And it certainly sounds like I think when he holds the chord, it does that, when he's holding it down,
Okay.
I think. Um, so, which is just on, it's so cool. I just think when the Cradle Will Rock, the first two songs, Cradle Will Rock and Everybody Wants Some. I mean, you just throw them up to 10 on every time, and I just in the car, I'll listen to it in the car, and I'm just doing air drums and guitar. I mean, I can't stop. It's just insane. Um, and like you said, the whole breakdown, the jungle drums, and the whole, I like the line that goes up the stocking, and I like those high heels too. And it's just like you said, with other bands, I'm like, come on, Van Halen, it fits perfectly. And Roth was so good at that stuff. He was just so good at it. And one of my buddies who loved Van Halen back in the day, he used to always say that Roth was kind of like the guy, like, hey kid, come over here. You want to see something? Like the guy that was like in the alleyway, like, come over here. He always felt like that a little bit, like a little edgy, a little darker, like, hey man, you want to see something you never seen before? Come on, follow me. Um, and it kind of this whole album has that feel to it. And it really, like you said, it starts out really heavy with, Fools and Romeo Delight and Lost of Control, of course. But then it kind of lightens up as it goes, where, all of a sudden it goes into Take Your Whiskey Home, which is sort of like a always had these like little kind of acousticy things that he did, like Ice Cream Man. And I think this is one of them too. This Take Your Whiskey Home is a little bit like he had that idea, and then Eddie comes in with a heavier thing at the end. Um, and then Could This Be Magic is totally acoustic, which I think is great. It's and as you had mentioned, there's like, that whole could this be magic? Could this be love? And I said, and that whole like three-part harmony thing, which is kind of new for them. Um, and it's just so great. So anyway, I'm repeating a lot of what you said, but and then in a simple rhyme, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of people that think that that's a really good deep track. Like that's just a really good song that doesn't never gets talked about.
And
Uh,
never got airplay.
no, it didn't. It didn't, and it feels like it could have, if they had pushed that song. Um, but ends on a great note within a simple rhyme. So yeah, so that's my take as well. I think it's a really strong hard rock album. And I do think that they're taking a little bit more chances, doing things just a little bit differently from the first two records, because they had already done that. And I think Eddie in particular was chomping at the bit to do different things. And so that kind of leads us into the next album, right? Um, so fair warning, and I know you have the stats, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you for fair warning.
Okay, first of all, just to mention some things that you said about Women and Children First. It is slightly darker, but I think Fair Warning is definitely their darkest album. And
Yeah.
it got the least amount of airplay,
Mhm.
probably, out of their records. And I think that's why it only in this country, in America, it only went 2 times platinum. It's the lowest certified record out of their first 6 with Roth. So it's amazing. Everyone always talks crap about Diver Down, how there were too many covers, it's not a good record, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But it sold, I think, 4 or 5 million copies,
Yeah.
Diver Down.
Yeah.
And Fair Warning only went double platinum in America, but it reached number 5. And the previous album, Women and Children First, hit number 6. In Australia, where our buddies Peter Kerr and Bicycle Legs are, it hit 97 on the charts in Australia. In Canada, it was a platinum album. Tim Derling, Martin Popoff, Mike Ladano went number 11 in Canada. In Sweden, Pontus Land, number 18. And then in the UK, it hit number 49. So it charted the best here because they're an American party band, and that's where they were the biggest.
Yeah.
Came out April 91, once again, recorded at Sunset Sound Recording Studios in Hollywood, California, produced by Templeman, engineered by Don Landy again, no covers again. And this one's even shorter than the last one, 31 minutes and 11 seconds.
31 minutes.
A short album.
Very short.
I can't believe how short these 70s and early 80s records were.
I love it, though. I kind of love it.
In the late 80s and early 90s, everyone's doing 50, 60, 70-minute albums. The prog band's going up to 77, 80 minutes like Dream Theater.
Yeah.
And even Smashing Pumpkins on my shirt, when they did a double record, each album was an hour long, 60 minutes each.
Was that Melancholy? Melancholy?
Yeah, Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness.
Right, yeah.
So it's 2 hours, 2 CDs, and this Van Halen record's 31 minutes, but there's no filler on it.
No filler.
In my mind, to me,
No
there's no filler.
No fat.
All killer, no filler.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it was like you said, it was their, I just wanted to emphasize, it was their slowest selling LP at the time of the Roth. It was the slowest selling of the Roth era. Yeah.
And it's such a great underrated album. And it's darker. This is where the darkness comes in.
Yeah.
And Eddie even quit or wanted to quit the band because he was just fed up. He wanted to do things his way. He was sick of going into a studio at a certain time and recording. He wanted to do it himself. That's why he and I think Don Landy eventually built 5150 in Eddie's home so he could just go there and record and play whenever he wanted. And I'm sure there are hundreds and thousands of hours of unreleased Van Halen stuff. Hopefully we'll get it, but that remains to be seen. I think it's up to probably Alex and Wolfgang now if we'll ever see that stuff.
Yeah. And that resulted in this, by the way. This was when Eddie and Don Landy took over.
Yep. And you could tell because that's when they really start getting into the keyboards.
Yeah.
That's when Eddie was just sick of guitar. And he, like you said, he started out as a piano player. And actually in the beginning, I just didn't want to interrupt you before. Eddie started off as the drummer and Alex was on guitar. And then they realized, well, let's switch it up. And they reversed it. And now we know what happened after that.
Yeah.
Eddie was one of the best guitar players ever. He just, who do you say? Maybe Hendrix, maybe some Clapton, then Eddie Van Halen, then Malmsteen. You could throw Blackmore in there. But Eddie Van Halen's one of the originals. And so many metal bands, hard rock bands in the 80s just copied his sound.
Oh, yeah.
And I can go on and on.
Randy Rhoads. Yep.
Randy Rhoads. But Randy was so original, and it's a shame that he passed so young because what he would have done, wow. Yeah. Even if he went to the classical guitar realm, it just would have been interesting.
Yeah.
He just had it. Some of these guys just have that magic.
Mm-hmm.
And you could play their guitars and not sound like them because it was sort of in their fingers. It was in their souls.
Yeah.
Just a unique style. And Edward Van Halen definitely had
it. Oh,
and
God.
You could see it on the first 6 albums. You could see it on everything he ever did, even though maybe the Hagar era is not as good as the Roth era. But that's another debate for another time.
That's another episode. Yeah.
Yeah. So the way this album starts off with the 5-minute Mean Street, just that intro of Eddie on guitar with the hammer-ons and the dive bombs, and you probably know the terms better than I do. Yeah. That is mind-blowing. And that's this is one of the best Van Halen songs. Yeah. And then when he goes into that riff, And then when Alex comes in, that's
Forget it.
amazing, mind blowing. That's one of my favorite Van Halen songs.
Oh, so great. That intro is unbelievable. Yeah.
And
Unreal.
then let's see. I remember what did I write down for this? Fabulous frenetic fretwork opens the tune, and then that riff at 33 seconds that I did. And then the drums, it's mind blowing. I put wow. And again, the guitar solo was amazing in this song. And then that breakdown where they just quiet it down. This is home.
Yeah.
This is Mean Street.
Oh.
And then the way it kicks off with the he's
Turn
going up
from
with
hunted into
the
hunter. Yeah.
It's just an
hunt
amazing
somebody down. Yeah.
And of course, you get Roth with the spoken word rap, and it just fits in perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't come across as pretentious at all, like all my prog records with a spoken word that I just cringe at sometimes. It's just meant to be.
Yes.
They would the meeting of these four guys and the way they got together. And could this be magic? It definitely was on the first 6 records. Even Diver Down, which is so maligned. I really like that record. The covers are good.
I do too. Yeah.
Great. I won't go into that. I won't go off the track too much.
Okay.
And I'll be like our buddy Grant. I'll be going off on another tangent.
Exactly.
Too many tangents.
Stay focused, man. Stay
Grant
focused.
Arthur, you're in my head, Grant Arthur. Oh no. So then you get Dirty Movies, and getting back to the Martin Popoff thing, Dirty Movies is in quotes.
Quotes, yeah.
Why is that in quotes? So this is love has a question mark. Why does that have a question mark? It's part of Roth's evil plan.
I guess.
Produce punctuation. Sinner Swing has an exclamation mark at the end of it. What the heck is going on here? So getting on to Dirty Movies, it just has that groove. Van Halen has this groove with he has Alex Van Halen on the drums. Just that groove is just, you could almost dance to it. It's just this intense, tight groove. And I just love his drum grooves.
Yeah.
And the way, I mean, on the next song, it's called a swing, and they do swing. Sort of like the Black Sabbath rhythm section, just sort of the way the rhythm section makes the band. They're the underpinning to the integrity of the music, and then you get the singer and the guitar player just overlay it, and it's just, they make the perfect foundation. Michael Anthony or Eddie, who's ever playing the bass, and then you get Alex on the drums. Just the groove on Dirty Movies, I just love it. He's just in the pocket, like all the time.
Yeah.
And it's a mid-pace groover. It's an interesting song to put at number 2 after the last album. We have Everybody Wants Some, which is so heavy, even though it starts out kind of mellow. But it's a mid-pace song, so it's a little different. And then you get Sinner Swing, and the energy level goes right back up with Sinner Swing. Get out and push. Love that.
Yeah.
The backing vocals on this song are excellent, I wrote down. And just Eddie's riffs on the verses of Sinner Swing, great. And then you get Hear About It Later. There was a live video for this song. Even though this album came out before MTV started, they did release a live performance video of this in concert. They show Roth jumping off the Marshall stacks or the drum riser, and you just see Eddie going off on this. And again, this is a classic song done live all the time in the Roth era. It's got such a catchy chorus. And I love, this is what I wrote down, at the end of the song, I love Alex Van Halen's cymbal work just to end the song. Just ends it in a different way, and it's really great. So an amazing first side on this album.
Yes.
Then side 2 opens up with Unchained, another classic song. And Unchained is just so heavy. That riff again, I wrote down that riff again, the solo, the breakdown. And just on this song, it should be noted that's Ted Templeman. For years, I thought it was David Lee Roth saying, "Come on, Dave, give me a break." And it's Ted Templeman.
Yeah.
Well, because Roth was clowning around in the studio, probably wasting time.
Right.
And Templeman probably tried to corral him in. "Come on, Dave, give me a break. Let's get back to it." They just put that part in it. And then when David Lee Roth goes, hey, one break coming up, and then right back into it. Yep.
Yeah.
Just amazing. Another classic Van Halen song, probably one of my favorites also. Unchained is an amazing song. And that got a lot of radio airplay back in the day. That
It
was the big
did,
song on this
it did.
record.
Yeah, I remember hearing that on the radio for sure.
And then you get the mellow bluesy push comes to shove. And once again, I got to say it, that groove, the rhythm section, Alex Van Halen, Michael Anthony, hopefully I'm not wrong there. And Dave's spoken word intro, what is there to do tonight? That whole spiel he does is great.
What's in
And I
that
love the
bottle?
harmonics. I think it's Eddie Van Halen in the solo. He's hitting some harmonics. Bow, 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 bow. I
Yep.
love that little part. It's so catchy. It's a hook in itself.
Oh,
You
yeah.
gotta love it. Thing about the song is it fades out too soon. That always disappointed me.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were in the studio and then they were touring. In the studio for a couple of weeks, you make a record, you go right back out on tour. That's what
Yeah,
the record company wanted in those days.
right.
So that's what they did.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm sure they had to get back on tour. Yep.
Yep. Because you got to make the money for the label. Then you get the sleeper track on this album. So This Is Love, question mark. That's for you, Mr. Popoff. So with this song, this actually was released as a single in America, but it didn't chart on the Hot 100. It actually hit number 110 on the Bubbling Under Billboard Hot 100 chart. And before, you remember, I mean, you grew up in Jersey. I don't know if you ever got the station WLIR. Did you ever listen to that station,
Yeah.
Tom?
Yes.
Before, I think it was in 1982, they went new wave, new music, whatever you want to call it, when they started playing The Fix, Flock of Seagulls, Missing Persons, all those type of bands in 82. But before that, they were a rock station from Long Island. And I remember hearing So This Is Love on WLIR at the time when they were still a rock station. They used to
Okay.
play deeper cuts than the Manhattan stations did. I don't remember hearing So This Is Love on PLJ or
No,
NEW, who were the
no.
rock stations at the time, but I do remember hearing it on LIR.
Yeah,
So I thought that was
interesting.
pretty cool. It's
Yeah.
just a weird memory that I have hearing that on the radio. And this song, I just love the bass on this song, the way it starts off with, I guess it's Michael Anthony's bass line, do, 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 do. But
Yeah.
then I get so bummed out because when right before Roth's vocals come in, the bass and drums get a little lower.
Yeah, they do. They do. Yeah. Yeah.
And that always drove me bonkers. But that's just a very minor quibble I have. But it's a great song, and I think it's the deep track here. It's very catchy. Maybe the record label didn't push it, maybe because it's Van Halen. They were a hard rock band, and it has a hard edge to it still. It wasn't a big single, but I think this is a great song, and I always loved it. And they actually filmed a video for this song in Italy at a dinosaur park. So there was a cool video for this song that you could find on YouTube. I only saw it a couple of years ago. I never knew it existed. Unfortunately, I didn't have MTV when it started. I got it much later. So I missed out on a lot of cool videos they probably showed in the early years.
Hmm.
So this is a very good deep track. So This Is Love. And then you get the ending of the album, the last 4 minutes, you get Eddie screwing around on synthesizer for Sunday Afternoon in the Park. And it's a 2-minute instrumental. And I think it's just Eddie on synth and Alex on drums, but it has an interesting groove to it. And to me, it's the intro, just an elongated intro to a song that's actually a second shorter, the last track on the record, One Foot Out the Door. And it's really fast paced. And it's a fast tune. Love the drum work in it. Alex is doing those lead drums again. Just
Yeah.
listening, as I said, to this catalog again recently, and specifically these two albums, just what a great drummer Alex Van Halen is. And it's a shame he's retired. And once again, my problem with One Foot Out the Door, it's too short. It's 1:58. And
Yeah.
it sort of fades out, so it's even less than 1:58. But it's a cool way to end the record. And I know a lot of fans aren't too thrilled with this record. It's too dark.
Hmm.
It doesn't have not every song is great, but I really love this record. I love both of these albums.
Yeah.
So that's basically my spiel on this album. Oh, the last thing I should say is the cover art. That very cool cover art is a painting called The Maze by the artist is William, I hope I'm pronouncing there it is, his last name correctly, William Kurelek, Kurelek. And it's called The Maze, and it's different artwork. I like it. I think it's their best album cover to that point. It's just different. It's weird. It's eerie. It's sort of has that street like brawls going on, which
Yeah.
sort of reminds me of the song Mean Street.
Yep.
Maybe that's why they chose that artwork. So
Yep. I know I'm
I
with you on that. I was going to say the same thing, that I love the artwork because I remember being fascinated when I saw this record in the shops. I was like, look at that artwork. Like it was like very, and so right away the artwork tells you it's going to be a darker record for them because it's
yeah,
like, oh, there's like scenes of street violence and people beating each other up and people, guy kicking somebody and one of the, guy with the head against the wall, and you're like, what is this? Like, wow, this is is that Van Halen record? I just remember being very fascinated by the artwork. And it really does kind of, it's a portent of what the record is going to be. And when you hear Mean Street, it's like, oh, okay, that moment where he says, like you said, turn from hunted into hunter, go and hunt somebody down. Somebody said, fair warning, Lord, strike that poor boy down. And the
yeah.
band kicks in. And it's like, yes, like that moment is just so awesome. I mean, and of course, the beginning is incredible too, where you're just like your mind is just blown by what he's even. It's almost like he came in saying like, because at this point, I'm sure there are a lot of people started imitating him and stuff because he'd been around for a little bit. I almost feel like when he came in with Mean Street with that beginning, it's almost like, oh yeah, you guys watch this. Like I'm still the master. Check this out.
Yep.
You know, and I'm sure all the guitar players are just like, okay, let's bow down again.
We're
Uh,
not worthy. We're not
we're
worthy.
not worthy, exactly. Wayne's World style. And then Dirty Movies. I love Dirty Movies. Same thing. That whole like the that sort of slower groove. And you're right. I mean, I love your comparison to Black Sabbath. It's kind of like the rhythm section. People don't talk about the rhythm section of Black Sabbath that much, and it's so essential. And so is Van Halen. And like Alex is such a great drummer, and it's such a great groove that ding 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 boom, ding 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 ding, and oh my God, pretty amazing. Or no, I'm sorry. That's Push Comes to Shove. I'm sorry, I'm doing the wrong song. Um, but Dirty Movies is the pictures on a silver screen, greatest thing you've ever seen. Now your name is up in lights. I love the lyrics of the whole like good girl gone bad thing. It just fits again. It's kind of very dark, kind of like remember when that girl was prom queen? Like, oh, now
Oh man.
oh man, I just Roth is so great at that. Like it's like that chemistry between Eddie and Roth is just so apparent on these first six albums. Um, hear
And
about it.
then excuse me for a sec, they
Sure.
revisit that on Girl Gone Bad from 1984, the sort of a sequel to that
That's
in a
right.
way,
Yeah, yeah,
a
that's right.
spiritual sequel, if
Right,
you will.
absolutely. No, it's very true. Um, and this is I have to say before I forget that this is kind of like the culmination of the Brown sound that everyone talks about with Eddie, that he really
Yes.
had his guitar tone amazingly down by this point. It just sound this is a lot of people talk about the culmination of the Brown sound on this record. And I bought this guitar pedal. It's called the Brownie, and apparently it's supposed to be like Eddie's sound. And it actually does. If you crank this thing up and you crank up your amp, it's like it does sound pretty close to Eddie's tone. Um and but Hear About It Later is another great, like I just love that track. And you talked about there's a concert that got filmed in Oakland, and there's three songs from it. Um it's Hear About It Later, Unchained, and So This Is Love, I think are the three that you can find on YouTube. And like you said, it begins with the huge VH in the background, and David Lee Roth comes off the drum riser, does the splits, and Eddie's just tearing it up. And it's like you watch that video, and I go, oh, I wish I could have seen Van Halen. Oh my God, like I mean, when you're getting excited watching something on YouTube, imagine what it would have been like if you had been there, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm sure the place is going bananas. And they're so good live. They're such a great live band. So
And I saw them later. I never saw them in the initial run. I saw them
yeah,
with Sammy a couple of times, and then when Dave came back, I saw them live again.
yes, I saw them live on the comeback with Dave, and it was Dave wasn't quite up to par, but
Right.
Eddie was still shredding.
Yep.
So it was pretty cool to just watch Eddie in action, I have to say. Um, but But anyway, as you mentioned, this was the slower sell. They Warner Brothers was disappointed with this album when it came out, and this is a culmination of Eddie pushing harder for more darker, edgier material. That's kind of what he wanted because they kept being called a party band. Oh, it's a party band. Oh, they're just a good time having party band. And Eddie was like, time out. Like I want to be more of an artist here. I want to be more
Yes.
respected. So he was really pushing this agenda of going harder and edgier, and of course, it didn't sell very well. So the next album, it's like David's like, I told you, man. And Dave ends up kind of running the show on Diver Down a little more and does the whole Big Bad Bill is sweet, William now, and Where Have All the Good Times Gone, and all the covers, and Pretty Woman, and but there still is some edgy things on Diver Down, and I agree with you that it's kind of an underrated. Everyone always rips on it, puts it really low. I think it's a pretty little guitars. I mean, come on, I love that song.
And
Uh,
Secrets. I love Secrets. I'm a big
Secret,
Secrets guy.
yeah,
Probably the most melodic song in the Roth era.
yeah, and Hang 'Em High. I mean, there's some really great tracks on Diver Down.
Eddie
Uh,
shreds on Hang 'Em High.
he does
And the
absolutely.
Full Bug too.
Bulldog, yeah,
When it kicks
right.
in, boom.
Yeah, and that album was sort of rushed. I mean, they had to anyway. Well, that's another episode. I'm getting sidetracked.
Okay.
We're talking about this album, um, yeah, so anyway, it is interesting that they did go the opposite for the next record, and because this one didn't sell as well. It only sold 2 million. Come on, Mike. Come on, guys. That's how popular they were. It's like 2 million was a failure. That's crazy. So anyway, I adore this record. It hit me right at a time. I think I was like 13 or something when I think I bought it on cassette. I was 13 years old and I wore that thing out. I just listened to it constantly. And it's still to this day when I listen to it, I still just love it to death. It just, there's a lot of people, this album has been reassessed in, recent. It seems like it's going up people's lists more and more, I think, when you watch rankings and things like that. So, it's deservedly so. I think it's a great album. So, so that being said, it comes to that final moment on these episodes that's so predictable. But if you'd have to pick one of these of the two, and this is definitely a battle. I mean, this is tough for me
It was.
for sure. So, what would you if you were pushed to choose one of these albums, which one would it be?
Push comes to shove, huh?
That's right. Exact. Perfect. Yes.
Although I love Women and Children First, I'm going to have to go with Fair Warning here.
Yeah.
Start to finish, 31 minutes in and out the door, 1 foot out the door, and just a great album. It has Unchained, it has Mean Street, so this is love. I have to vote for it. And my vote goes to Fair Warning from 1981.
Yes. Well, I have a habit of agreeing with my guests, and people are going to be like, Curlis, you always agree with your guests, but I can't help it. They always pick the right album. So you picked the right one. I'm agreeing with you, man. Man, I got to go with Fair Warning. As much as this, and like I said, I mean, there's nothing wrong. This is a great record, but there's something about this album, like you mentioned, the trifecta of Mean Street, Unchained, and for me, it's Hear About It Later. So Mean Street, Hear About It Later, and Unchained alone, just those are just like fantastic songs, like unbelievable. The high watermark for Van Halen, like those are some of my favorite Van Halen songs of all time.
Yep.
So I have to. This one just edges it out because of those songs.
This is my number one Van Halen, and Women and Children's probably number two. It
Yeah.
used
Oh,
to be a
really?
different one, but it's changed recently,
Yeah, it's
past
tough.
few
Yeah.
years.
It's tough for me. I would say Van Halen 2 is up there for me too. Like it would be tough. The second slot would be like you said, between the Women and Children First and 2. For some reason I love 2. And people like, what are you crazy? The debut? What are you talking about? But I just think the debut is, everyone it's a great record. But
That's
I
why
just
it sold so many copies.
yeah. I mean the Roth era is just untouchable. I mean, I bought this. I had to show this. I bought this little, like, that's what I was showing, these little, it's like they come with, like, they look like little albums, and it's like the whole Roth era, and you just, you open it up. And I was kind of psyched to find this, and it's all the whole Roth era, just
Nice.
really nice.
But
So
it's
I'm
just
kind
the first six. It doesn't have a different kind of truth, right?
no, no, it's just the
Okay.
first six.
Yeah, so
Um,
It's a Warner Brothers box then.
exactly, exactly. So,
Okay.
and I'm of the, I'm in the Roth camp. I mean, I like some of the Sammy stuff, but that kind of feels more like just like bonus material or something. It's not, it's there are some moments with Sammy that are pretty good, but it's for me, it's the Roth era. So,
And I want to give a shout out to Me Wise Magic from the first Greatest Hits record
oh
when
yeah,
Roth came back. Love that song. Me Wise Magic, great song.
I haven't heard that in a long time. I got to listen to that. I haven't listened to that in forever. So,
We used to throw that on because Josh and I at the record store, we loved that song.
yeah,
Just Eddie's guitar work in that song is great.
yeah. All right. Well, last question for you, and then we'll wrap it up. What is
Okay.
your take? What is your take on different kind of truth?
I liked it. We
Yeah.
used to, Josh and I, we even liked Tattoo, and I know people hate Tattoo.
Right.
And it's just a very catchy song. It's a melodic, catchy Van Halen song, like Secrets or So This Is Love. And then the rest of the album, even though a lot of his older songs, it's great.
Yeah.
I really think it's a good, probably be my number 7 if I rank the albums. It would be after the Roth era, then that, then
Mhm.
all the Sammy stuff, and then last would have to be 3.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Definitely
it's
favorite.
respectable, man. Like things like Chinatown, and there's a couple tracks on there. You're like, whoa, like
Stay
this.
Frosty. I love
Yeah,
Stay
Stay
Frosty.
Frosty. Yeah. Yeah. Like it's just some heavy stuff on that album, and it's very legit. It sounds really good. So I'm with you. I enjoy that record. And so yeah. I have to say that you're right. Last thing, last point, and that is that's what I love Van Halen for. It's the heavy with the catchy, right? It's like it's heavy, but it's like you mentioned this that their choruses are so catchy and they stick in your head.
Mhm.
So they've got that sort of, and I think that was the brilliance of the Eddie and Roth, where it was like Eddie brought the riffs and the heaviness, and Roth brought like the sort of let's make this into a radio hit. Like we need to have like oh Jamie's crying. Wah,
Yeah.
wah. I mean that's like such a hook. Like that
It's the best of both worlds.
right, exactly.
And you
Absolutely.
could say, for what you were saying before, how sort of this album, Fair Warning, was Eddie's album. And then the next album, Diver Down, was all the covers and Roth's album. You could say that 1984 is the culmination of both things put together, where you
Yeah.
have the catchy songs that were the big, big hits. And then the other half of the song are the darker, deep, heavy cuts that were
Yeah.
from Eddie, and the more catchy stuff is almost like from Roth, where you get jump, even though it was Eddie's idea with the whole keyboards on the song. It's sort of the best of both worlds, where you
Yeah.
get the catchy and the heavy.
I
You
always
divide the
forget
album right into 4 hits and then 4 heavy, deep tracks.
I always forget about 1984 that it's got some heavy stuff on it at the end, especially like
Yeah,
the girl
Girl Gone
you
Bad.
mentioned Girl Gone Bad and what's the other one? There's two songs that are really heavy on this. Well, Drop Dead Legs is pretty heavy,
Yep. It
but
has a groove, though, too. Great groove.
House of Pain is the other one, House of Pain.
That's the one.
Oh, those two, House of Pain and Girl Gone Bad, you're like, whoa! The last two songs, you're like, oh, I forgot how heavy these are. So you're right. It's a great record for that, like sort of both best of both. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
then Top Jimmy is the other like non-hit song.
Right, right. Absolutely. Okay, well, man, we could talk Van Halen all night. Believe me, we could, especially Roth era. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Davey, thank you so much for joining me again. I hope you had fun.
Yes, I did. Thanks for having me. And
Oh
just
yeah.
a quick reminder, my channel, Cretin Classics, if I may.
Sure.
I just did a recent rant comparing the recent history of Yes with Styx. I did a video on that, and I'm about to do another rant video that's coming up next. And then eventually, I'm still trying to get to it. My album ranking of the Blue Oyster Cult catalog is coming very soon, also. So that's on Cretin Classics. And thank you for having me again, Tom. I appreciate it.
If you've stayed with us this long, we really appreciate it. Always, always have to mention, please like and subscribe if you like what you see, because it helps helps all of our channels. You know, whenever you see something, always hit the like button. And we'll have to see you next time on Curless Mania. So thanks again. Take care. Bye.